Hi, I'm Anya, also known as Meppity, and today I'll be drawing my character Niko in 10 different art styles. For those who don't know or forgot, like myself, a little over a year ago I made a similar video where I drew Niko in the styles of various video games and TV shows that influenced me in my childhood. This time, the theme is content I have watched during lockdown. After starting and finishing a bunch of shows in recent months, I figured it was fitting to draw a roundabout sort of fan art for each of them. I also think it's fun to play around with other art styles, but even more importantly, being stylistically adaptable is a valuable skill for corporate artists and animators, and this video is me kind of exercising that. Anyway, enough talking, let's get straight into the first style, my own. I decided to start off with my own style again because I think it's changed quite a lot in the last few months. Those who follow my work more closely may have noticed that at the start I called this character Niko. But isn't he Tom? Tom Bluejay? Well, yes, he was Tom Bluejay, but Tom was always a placeholder name. It's a very common name, especially here in the UK. Like, half the boys in my class used to be called Tom or Ben or Harry or Will. Anyway, it was just a placeholder, and only very recently did I decide that Niko would be a more fitting name. I think it's like Nikolai or Nicholas, and I want him to be of Russian descent, and so that ties in a little bit more to my own existence. This time around, I was more experimental with the brush I used for the line art. This time I used something called Ink Bleed, which in Procreate is one of the default brushes, and I absolutely love it. I tend to flip-flop between that, dry ink, and Mercury. Those are my three favourite inking brushes. The other thing that I have changed with Niko is his nose. It was only very recently that I have changed the way I draw noses on my characters. It was always a point of contention for me. It was just something easy to do to draw a triangle. But after doing my Lego animation, I had a more integrated nose on the face that was a similar shape still, and I thought it was really fun. So that's kind of how I've been drawing him. I still do the little spiral in the ear and the bags under the eyes, but I just have a few more changes in general. I think the way that I also draw wrinkles in clothing has slightly changed. It's a little bit more graphic. And the other thing, as you can see now, is with hands, I add circles on all the knuckles. This is a detail that I could get rid of if I was to animate this on a high level, but for the time being, especially when it's illustrated, I think it's fun. So that is my updated style. Moving on, we have The Owl House. The Owl House is absolutely my favourite show that I'm currently watching. I think that Dana Terrace has done an incredible job, and I cannot wait to see where season 2 takes us. It's not a world that I thought I would fall in love with because I'm not big on magic and witches and academia stuff, but no, I absolutely fell in love. I think the characters are so well written. I cried at any Lumity points just because it made me so happy. I don't know, it's such a feel-good but also dark and completely enthralling show. Anyway, going back to the style, I used the technical brush for this piece, as I did for pretty much all of the others that I'm doing today. I figured that it's nice and simple, gets the point across, and is pretty close to whatever they use in the actual show. Something I'm noticing only now as I'm recording this is that I made his legs too thin in comparison to his arms, so it looks a bit awkward. I wish I could change that now, but too late, and I do not have time to redraw this guy. Rather than giving Niko his puffy coat, I figured that it would be nice to put him in the hex side uniform. And not only is red, a fitting colour for Niko, it also happens to be the colour for the Bard track. And the Bard track is exactly where I think Niko would belong. Something that I've decided upon in more recent times is that though he's a little bit lost in his world and he doesn't really know what career he wants to pursue, he has a musical gift, namely piano. It's something that I think is very subtly referenced throughout his existence, but I think it'd be nice for him to hone in on this skill if he was a witch at Hexside. And that's the other thing, is I decided to make him a witch because Luz is, well, she's like the only human, so I don't think it makes sense to have another human in this show. But anyway, that's the Owl House. And now we have, I would say, J.G. Quintel's regular style. And that's because I've watched both the rest of regular show and Close Enough during lockdown. I really love J.G. Quintel's work. I think that it takes me back to this nostalgic time that I wasn't even born in, this very 80s blockbuster-centric world. I think it's a really fun place to be transported to, and the ridiculous antics that happens to all the characters. I think that regular show has one of the best TV show endings I have ever witnessed. I don't know how to explain it, especially without spoiling it, but it's just so fitting for the style. And Close Enough is, I would say, a fantastic successor to regular show, and I cannot wait to see where the rest of that goes. As for the style, I realised as I was doing this that it kind of looked similar to Gravity Falls, and I'm not sure why, minus the eyeballs, because back when I drew the Gravity Falls style, I was paying attention to different things, and I don't think the shows look similar at all. But I think the main differences in the shows are the backgrounds and the themes of what are drawn in the backgrounds more so than the characters. But also the animation style, the way they move and talk, and obviously the subject matter is also wildly different. So, visually I noticed that similarity, but I don't think it translates to the shows on a whole. I picked similar colours to what I do with my original Niko. I think that the colour palettes for both regular show and Close Enough are very varied. You can have all kinds of things. There's so many different locations that everything goes. That being said, this was actually the first drawing I did, and I was really struggling to pick the exact red that I wanted for that puffy coat. There's regular show. I actually redid some of the line art after recording the initial time lapse, which you can see in this little speedy bit, but whatever. So Infinity Train has a very odd place in my heart. I remember being so annoyed when that initial pilot came out in 2016, and the reason I was annoyed was because my Snow Globe story, my TV show idea in which Niko is the main character, it took place on an infinite train, and then boom, suddenly this pilot comes out from my idea, and I was so upset. But you know what? It became something absolutely fantastic. I really love the style of storytelling because it doesn't hold back, not every character has to be redeemed, not every person has to be good at the end of the day or whatever. I think that there's a lot of honesty in the storytelling and the characters and the way that they react to things. I felt very in tune with Lake, and I feel like Niko would also feel perfectly in tune with her. I think there's a lot of similarities where the difference is she is actively trying to find herself and become her own person, whereas he is still lost and has kind of accepted this weird purgatory that he's put himself into. And that's a fun difference that I think would be good to explore. And Janie, my other main character for my show, she would be like Jesse, I think, where he is, very bubbly and bright and always looks for the positives and has a goofy sense of humor, but ultimately it can be his downfall at times. So I just think it's such a good dynamic, and I do feel like Infinity Train is another one of my favorites, and it just seems to have so many coinciding ideas with my own, and perhaps that's why I like it. Maybe that's my narcissism kicking in. Anyway, I forgot to talk about the actual drawing. Stylistically, I think I used the technical brush again, and it's slightly more detailed than the rest of the styles I did today, but it's still very animatable. I drew a lot of my inspiration from Simon from book 3 because I think that he's a similar age and body proportions to Niko, though the hair and the character arc are wildly different. And that is Infinity Train. Moving on, we have Amphibia. So Amphibia and The Owl House, they kind of came out on Disney at the same time, and I think that both of them are really awesome. And now we're heading into the depths of season 2 of Amphibia as of recording this. I cannot wait to see what happens with the story once again. So Amphibia, as is in the name, most of the characters are amphibians, newts, frogs, and so forth. So I didn't have that many humans to go off of to reference Niko. I didn't feel like it would be fitting for him to become a frog or a toad or a newt. I just don't see him being that, and I think that takes away from me trying to do the style of the humans. Therefore, I used Anne and her cohort as my main inspiration. I also gave him socks, which he does not usually wear. Either that or he has ankle socks that you can't see. I can't decide how hygienic I want Niko to be. So I gave him socks because all of the girls have them and they look so fun. I love the way that they play on the ankle shape. So I gave that to him, and I gave him a funky expression. Regarding expressions, last time I made him smile and be sort of cheerful and friendly looking in a lot of the poses, and as was pointed out in the comments section, it didn't really match how I was describing him, and I think it's because I got ahead of myself, where I have this particular character arc in mind for him in my head, but that is not the character that I want the world to know yet. And so this time around, his facial expressions, his poses, his actions are a little more irritated, pessimistic. He's kind of displeased with the world, and maybe this is him complaining about his portion size being too small. I don't know. I also scuffed up his jacket a little bit in post because I imagine if he was also transported to Amphibia, he'd also look a little bit tousled up. And now we have Midnight Gospel. With Midnight Gospel, I'm actually only on episode 2 right now. I've loved it so far, although I've definitely had to be in the right mindset to watch it in order to have the right level of existential crises. But out of all of these shows so far, I think the style of this one is phenomenal. Penn Ward has outdone himself. I love the subtle gradients and the very, very graphic shapes and the use of like the noise brush everywhere. It's just so tasty, and the colourful line art. So when I got to Niko's coat being red, I looked to Clancy's skirt that is also red but has yellow line art, and I was so excited that I could also get to use this yellow line art. I also like that the style is very unique but still has that noodly-like quality that Adventure Time had. The puffy coat really lends itself to this style too. With this piece, I used the Mercury brush because I felt like the line art is just slightly crunchier than everyone else who has a slightly softer, smoother style. Niko's eye, he's green-eyed, which isn't normally noticeable in my stuff because I give my characters beady eyes, but yeah, he'd be green-eyed, and I unintentionally made that face look a little bit too similar to Clancy, the main character in Midnight Gospel, but I also think it works, so I'm kind of okay with it. I'm not sure what other eye I would have given because every single character seems to have a completely different eye style, and so I just went with the most iconic one. So that's Midnight Gospel. More graphic than the rest and more colourful, but I think one of my favourites. And now we are at Rick and Morty. I used my free 5-day trial, 5 days, which I personally think is abysmal, on YouTube TV to watch Rick and Morty. That wasn't the initial reason, but I watched the show Orphan Black. I finished it up on there, and then I was like, okay, well, I have 10 hours left. Let me binge watch all of season 4 of Rick and Morty. Once again, I think it's fun. I think it's a good show. I do like the concepts that are discussed, but the sort of silly over-the-top framing that surrounds them. And I also think the characters have great personalities that are very believable, especially in the space that they're within. You know, they're wacky and exaggerated, but at the end of the day still feel very relatable to the human experience. This style is definitely more lenient in terms of accuracy, like the feet don't quite sit flat on the ground as easily as some of the other styles that are more realistic, and so it presented its own challenge in that I had to kind of accept some things don't quite make sense. I think it's a really fun style, and I'd actually love to do some prop design or some design work that's in this primetime TV style. I was using Procreate 5's new reference feature for the first time to reference the colors, and I really like this feature. I'm getting used to it still. I keep accidentally zooming in and out of the reference itself rather than moving the reference window around, but that's nothing to do with this video. This is my Rick and Morty version of Niko. Woo! Here we have Star versus the Forces of Evil. Star versus the Forces of Evil has definitely received varied feedback, I would say. I think this final season took a strange turn. I'm not sure how I feel about the ending of the show. I don't think it was received too positively overall, and I can definitely see why. But the show as a whole, I think, was great. It's definitely been an influence in my decision to become an animator, and is a really fun collection of characters. Another reason I chose to do Star was because Marco Diaz, one of the main characters in it, kind of looks similar to Niko, and so I wanted to see just how similar they really were by drawing my own version in the Star versus style. And I realized the nose, the facial shape, the hair, they're not that similar. The coloring is fairly similar with this relaxed coat that's red, but I think that's a very common design choice in a lot of kind of awkward male protagonists anyway. For this, I referenced a lot of the students at Echo Creek because there's so many different humans and mumans in this show, and there was so much reference to look at, which is great. Usually I really struggle to find something on the wiki pages as opposed to having to comb through the show all over again. Something I noticed when doing all of these styles was that the hands are actually fairly similar in most of these shows, and it's good because I draw hands in a reasonably similar way anyway. I'm once again revealing Niko's green eyes. They're green like mine because I think it's something I may not have mentioned before, but both Niko and Janie, my two main characters, are an amalgamation of the things I hate about myself and hate about other people combined to see, they're at odds with themselves, and so it's often me dealing with my own issues through these characters. Well, that was Star versus the Forces of Evil. Now we have Over the Garden Wall. This one, I really don't feel like I did the style justice and is, I would say, my least favourite, just because he kind of looks awkward standing in space. I decided I wanted to give him a hood because I've never actually drawn Niko wearing his hood on his coat. I also felt that it fit the slightly awkward nature that is mirrored in Wirt, one of the main characters in Over the Garden Wall. Pat McHale's style is so wonderful. I love the kind of muted, dull, darker colour scheme of this. Very autumn vibey, hence why I recently watched the film again. I mean, I know it's a mini-series, but it's basically a feature film, right? And I think that the hair as well, I added some of it poking out because the hair is a very distinctive feature within the Over the Garden Wall style, where there's quite a lot of lines on the ends of it in comparison to, say, Rick and Morty, where it's just singular blobs of stuff on top of their heads. For this version of Niko, I referenced the kids that, spoiler alert by the way, are the ones that are like at the Halloween event, the ones that are not in the unknown, the ones that are actually in the real world, just dressed in costumes. Something I really liked about this style is I could return to my classic triangle nose, which I am slowly phasing out of my art style. It may make its return on occasion, but for now this was just a quick hello, hello again old friend, see you another time kind of thing. So that was Over the Garden Wall. Unfortunately, not my favourite, but maybe I'll give it another go someday. Okay, so now we have Hazbin Hotel. I told you that this edition is of content that I watched during lockdown, and one of my videos several months ago was a follow-up video to my redesigning Hazbin Hotel characters thing, which means I watched Hazbin Hotel again, and I figured this is also a chance for me to try and redeem myself. I did such a terrible job trying to emulate Viv's style that first time. It's actually horrendously embarrassing, and especially after drawing this version, I was surprised at how easy it was. Seeing as Hazbin Hotel is set in hell, and there's no humans in hell, I decided to turn Niko into a cat-like demon, and that's because when his name was Tom, it was like Tom Cat. And mentioning that piano-y element to him again, I decided to mark the obvious through his patterning by adding piano keys to his tail and to his ears. The spots and the eye shape are in reference to the snow globe that he's stuck in my show. The bar under his eyes are kind of like the base of the snow globe, and then the eyes themselves are the glass dome, and the circles are snowflakes of sorts. I didn't keep the puffy jacket because it's not very fashionable in hell. Instead, I replaced it with a bow tie because for some reason everyone has a bow tie. I guess that's the fashion statement of the time. And I also gave him an X on his heel, and that is because, well, he hasn't died in my universe, right? But he has to have died somehow, and so I've marked it there to represent an Achilles heel. So it's more like an emotional death, some sort of weakness or something. I also added pinstripe to add more detail, and the pinstripe is kind of like a balloon, makes me think of a hot air balloon or something. Of course, I used red, white, grey, and yellow as my main colours, and I think it actually turned out fairly accurate. Do I like it? I don't know, but there you go. Okay, I told you I would do 10 styles, but here is a bonus style. I had the weirdest thing where, just out of nowhere, suddenly this damn show called Clone High was popping up everywhere. There were so many JFK memes and clips, and in my recommended section for like a month was this retro rerun video of all 4 hours of that one and only season. So the other week I actually watched the whole 4 hours in one go. I was doing other things on the side, I must add, and I actually really enjoyed the show. I think it's so silly and fun, great concept, and I really like the style. It's so graphic and definitely reminds me a little of Butch Hartman and early 2000s content. So I decided to give it a go. I'm really not sure how I wanted Niko to look in this, because he looks quite grown up in my finished version, and part of me was like, yeah, but he's only 17 in my universe. And then I remembered that the Clone High characters are only between 15 and 16, and they look like full-on adults. It's an adult show and everything. So I ended up being okay with that. His graphic shapes again lended themselves to this style, and I took elements from a bunch of the characters to try and create his face. The weird flattened eyes that are in a lot of the characters, that funny jaw and mouth that JFK has. The hands are very similar to Abe, and the trousers, I made his jeans like that because the show was set in modern times, which back then was 2002, 2003, and for some reason all the boys wore trousers like this, so I gave him that, even though typically Niko has skinny jeans. So that is my final style. There's 11 styles for you today. I hope you enjoyed watching all of them. I certainly enjoyed making them. I think it was very fun to practice. One of my favourite things actually is looking at all of them lined up, because you don't realise how extreme some proportions are until you see the size of the heads compared to each other, or the length of the legs and so on. Leave a comment down below and let me know what your favourite designs are. And whilst you're down there, don't forget to like the video and subscribe! I make all kinds of art-related videos. And why not also follow me on Instagram at Meppity and Meppity. Meppity is for more polished work, whilst Meppity is for sketches, works in progress, and general goofing around. And how about supporting me on Patreon? For $4 a month, you get to watch my videos early. You also get exclusive access to some other bits and bobs, including my CalArts portfolio, and you get unlimited access to audio critiques from me. People have been finding this especially useful for portfolios and so on, and now is the return of the university application season, so this is the best time for you to hop on and get some advice from me. A huge thank you to my current patrons, Snotty Frog, Owen, Itza, Monique, Big Chi, Jabbar, Andrew, Amanda, Tyler, Lena, Sarah, and Noah. You guys mean so much to me. Thank you for your continued support. Hopefully I've given some interesting insight along the way, and I hope to be making more stuff in the future. This is just a fun, silly video to try and get back in the swing of things. For those who don't know, I'm actually taking a year away from CalArts and have decided to try and make the most of this year, taking on various other projects and applying to jobs and so forth. From this, I also hope to start with a more regular upload schedule. I keep saying this almost every time I make a video, but now I actually have little else to focus on. That's a lie, I have a lot to focus on, but I have more time to focus on YouTube, and so I want to work on that. Thank you once again, and I hope you guys are having a great day, night, evening, whatever it is. I'll see you soon. Bye!